Hello and welcome to the Self Love Witch podcast. It is your host, Kim. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever time that you all are listening to this. I hope you guys are having a beautiful day. Now, today's episode is a game changer. And I want to take my time with this one because this right here was something that I myself had to strategically dismantle within my own head, which was, as a woman, how being too nice, too accommodating was setting me up for failure. Now, I feel like this whole concept stems from respect, right? I feel like when we're out and about interacting with others, the issue is a lot of us are either dealing with a lack of respect from someone else, or we're fighting for respect for someone else, or we're fighting for our own respect from someone else, or, the list goes on. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the whole concept of why women are raised to be polite beings of society, while men are completely trained to just be practically conquerors and not really pay attention to the aspect of being liked or being seen as nice, and how that whole situation is just a setup within itself. So I wrote down a few key notes here because I really wanted to make sure I was flowing properly with this topic. So on the aspect of respect is not a right. It should be. But realistically, respect is earned. And, even if it is earned, people's respect changes on a day-to-day basis. People's respect for themselves changes on a day-to-day basis, and that's just a common truth. But at the end of the day, self-respect is the thing that you as an individual have the most control over. And that is what will remain consistent. I feel like it's very important to always put all of your power within yourself, because people will disappoint you. Not everyone, but no one's perfect. No one's perfect. So it's just like, even if you have someone that you feel like will never disrespect you, there will be a moment in time where you probably will feel disrespected. Just when it comes to anything, you can't put your 100% trust into anything that you don't have 100% control over. I'm not saying not to trust people. I'm saying to acknowledge the facts that the only thing that will 100% meet your expectations and know the ins and outs of what that entails and can honestly avoid any mishaps and mistakes is you. So the way that we need to start looking at it is, to avoid disappointment, it's best to handle the things that you yourself hold dear to your heart, and just remember that you have control over that. So therefore, you have the biggest advantage of not being disappointed. Right? So self-respect is what will always remain consistent because it's something that we have control over. Now, second point, the fear of being seen as rude or unaccommodating or uncompromising will slowly dismantle your spirit. As women, we are legit trained to be polite members of society while being disrespected the most. That was strategically done, so it must be rewritten. And I feel like the way that can start to be rewritten is simply by acknowledging the ways that you caught yourself being nice and accommodating, and you kind of realize it wasn't true to how you truly felt. I feel like there's a way to be polite and kind in a way that isn't compromising how you truly feel and compromising your morals and your self-respect. I feel like, I come from the South, so we're raised in a very particular way. Respect your elders, yes ma'am, no ma'am, especially if they're of the elder community, get up when there's an older person, get up, let them sit down, typical things like that honestly you don't see in other parts quite often. But just that aspect, I feel like even growing up in the South, because we know the history of the South, we know about slavery, all things like that, and of course that all is encompassed into that. But we have to start analyzing self-respect, and just giving respect to others does not and should not equate to not respecting yourself. So for instance, if I were out and about and I'm trained to yes ma'am, no ma'am, an elder, a senior citizen, for example, but they're rude people, and they're nasty, and I'm just like, oh yes ma'am. No, that's an aspect where, okay, I know how I was raised, I know my morals and my standards and how I like to treat people of this age range. But if they are not respectful to me, I do not need to compromise myself and compromise my self-respect and not speak up and not stand up for myself. And I do not need to respect someone who is disrespecting me. And I feel like Southern women in particular battle this issue the most, because we are legit raised to be very polite, very respectful. So that benefits us as we get older, because we have this particular charm, we have this particular way of carrying ourselves. We know how to find ways to not be so quick to react, need I say, because we find we're kind of like it's kind of ingrained in us to just find ways to be polite and kind as much as possible, right? But I realized that was becoming a huge issue, because inadvertently it was teaching me to find peaceful routes around disrespect. Not even peaceful routes. It was teaching me a way to find routes away from addressing disrespect that inadvertently were taking me away from myself. I definitely dealt with, and it's a very challenging situation, and I feel like more people go through it than they like to, really acknowledge. It's definitely a problem. And I feel like it definitely is ingrained within this whole concept of self-respect, and just kind of like this fear of being seen as rude. Dismantling that definitely starts from looking at your childhood mannerisms and how you were raised and how you interact on a day-to-day basis, right? So point number 3, which kind of goes with what I said previously, you have to release the fear of being disliked. Being disliked for having boundaries, for saying no, for having preferences, having strict standards. It's a blessing, and I'm going to tell you why. If someone dislikes you based on the simple things that make you who you are as an individual, that lets you know immediately that they are not your people. And that's a blessing, to be able to discern who is not a good fit for you as quick as possible. We should not strive to be liked. We should strive to be respected, but always understanding that even that aspect of having someone's respect should not mount over your respect for yourself, because that is also fleeting. Just someone else is just someone else. So it's like you can't put your self-worth into another person's perception of you. And so, like I said, people's respect for even for themselves shifts every single day. So it's kind of like just remembering you have to figure out where to weigh people's perceptions on the scale of just what you care about on a day-to-day basis, and kind of like make sure it doesn't weigh over the things that genuinely matter to you. My next point I wrote down here was, you do not need to over-explain yourself. That is a people-pleasing mechanism. It also can come from childhood, where we just kind of always had to sit and explain ourselves because we felt this empathy, or we felt bad for disappointing someone, or not being or saying what someone expects us to say or how to be. But I feel like it's very important as a woman to stop over-explaining yourself. You don't need to explain why you feel the way that you do. You don't need to explain why you don't align with a specific project, person, place, or thing. You have self-sovereignty. So you have the right to exist and manipulate your reality as you see fit. You know, you're not hurting anyone by making your own decisions that benefit you, especially when it just has to deal with your boundaries and your expectations. I'm not saying that you don't owe certain people explanations. There are some people that you do owe explanations to, because I'm never going to sit here and I'm never cultivating toxic mindsets. You know, of course, there are gray areas within the black and white. But when it comes to just like people whose opinions, or just people who just, I don't know, who just feel like they have this entitlement over our shifts and our transitions and how we show up and how we choose to be and carry ourselves and our lives and our decisions, our personal decisions that don't truly have anything to do with anyone else. You do not have to explain those transitions to people. You don't have to explain why you no longer align with something, someone. You can if you choose to. Your self-sovereignty is your business. If you get up and you want to move to this state tomorrow, you don't have to explain yourself. You can explain yourself. And that's really what I want to highlight, is that you don't have to do anything. You choose to do something. That aspect of feeling like you have to do something is ingrained into, you know, your morals, your standards, but also it definitely comes from people-pleasing tendencies. You don't have to do anything. You know, like in my community, honey, we say, I don't have to do anything but be black and die. You know? And that's just kind of a statement that just means I don't have to do anything but exist, because that's my God-given right. That's my God-given right. I just have to exist. I don't have to do anything. How anyone's telling me I should live my life, how anyone's telling me I should orchestrate this, that, XYZ. I don't have to do anything. I could just be here and exist and do whatever I want. And I feel like self-sovereignty is a topic that is not spoken about enough, because it will really make everyone just realize how much we're playing a part in our own demise, because we're trying to people please. We're trying to be liked. We're trying to be accepted. We're trying to be seen in particular ways that make us feel safe, but it's not really authentic to who we are as a person. Because even with me, being a mystical, magical woman, you know, of course, I experienced a lot of rejection. I experienced a lot of a spiritual black woman. You know, you already know what that life entails. You experience a lot of racism throughout life. You experience a lot of misunderstanding. You experience a lot of, you know, being ostracized, especially as, you know, a witch in the black community, especially as someone who grew up in a Christian household. Like, you experience a lot of just aspects of life that make you feel different, make you feel like the black sheep. And you can go about that aspect of life two ways. You can either strive to be accepted and be completely inauthentic to yourself, or you can be yourself and find the people that actually connect and coincide with you. But even then, in the midst of both of those like polarities, you still need to be okay with yourself and truly begin to be unbothered about who likes you and who does not. You know, like, you don't have to accommodate all the time. You don't have to compromise all the time. You actually don't if you don't want to. You know, I just feel like we need to come to understand that even our kindness, the aspect of being too nice, too kind. When I say too kind, too nice, I'm not telling you to not be a nice person. I'm not telling you to not be a kind person. I'm not telling you to not be polite and considerate of others. But what I am telling you is there is an aspect where you do become too nice and too kind when you are completely disregarding yourself and completely disregarding your morals and your values. You have to stay true to you first. You know, even in relationships, I feel like we get so hell-bent on, okay, I want to be this kind of person. I want to show up for this person this kind of way. But we completely don't show up for ourselves, or we completely just forget the aspects and the ways that we showed up for ourselves. We strive so much as women to be someone, be something for somebody, be someone to somebody. And we do that because of many different reasons. But I'm telling you, when you strive to be that more so than you strive to be one and authentic with yourself, and you strive to have your boundaries and your morals and your self-respect, and making sure your relationships reflect that aspect of love you have for yourself, you know, when you're lacking that aspect, that balance, that truth, then that becomes a huge issue, and it slowly eats away at you as a woman. And it's definitely something that as a collective we have to work on addressing, and we have to work on slowly rewriting the narrative. Now, some ways I think that we can do that is practicing saying no. And practicing saying no is really going to allow you to, one, assess how you feel about something before just quickly reacting and agreeing to things, where if you were to actually take the time to think, you actually would have said no. Saying no will definitely help set that standard, because the art of saying no, it's not a simple thing. It's a very intricate thing, and it really reflects your relationship with yourself and your boundaries. It's so easy to say yes to everything. There are no boundaries within yes. There are boundaries within saying yes if you're saying yes to saying no to something. You know what I mean? But saying yes is so easy. And the reason why people pleasing is such an issue, the reason why a lot of women end up regretting so much, is not because of what they said no to, but because of what they said yes to. Saying yes is super easy. It's as easy as tying a shoe. It's as easy as taking a walk. Saying no requires you to either disappoint others or disappoint yourself. And then when you say no, you also have to kind of, it's like when you say no, you have to deal with possible potential conflicts or possible consequences, more so than if you were to say yes to things. You know, if you were to just go with the beat of everyone's drum and just say yes, like the only conflict that would really arise would be within yourself, because you would be so focused on pleasing everyone else. But when you're saying no, you are more than likely cultivating a better relationship with yourself and sticking to your boundaries and sticking to what you actually want for yourself, which helps create a better relationship and helps you to realize that the more you practice saying no, especially when you genuinely feel like you don't want to do something or you don't want to be a part of something, it's like, I feel like a molecular kind of cellular kind of thing happens each time. I can't explain it, but I do know from personal experience, when I started to assess certain invites or certain places or certain people, certain situations, and I would assess, like, does this align with what I want, with who I am? Is this something that I want to potentially be dealing with? And when I felt that no, and I assess the weight of the consequences versus if I were to just go along with things, I was like, yeah, no. And when I started saying no more, it's like everything that I ever wanted started coming easier. It's like a science. It's a science to saying no, because it rules out all of the fuckery. It completely rules out everything that doesn't align. Like when you say no to one thing, it's like the rest of the subgroups, a part of that stuff automatically becomes a no as well. And then now you're setting yourself up to more yeses that you would actually potentially say yes to, because you're now creating boundaries and limitations. You're closing doors where certain energies can't come through anymore, and you're allowing the doors that are yeses for you to remain open. So it's like the more you have boundaries, the better your life will be. Your life is not better because of how often you say yes to others. Your life is not better by how much you go against your own boundaries. Your life is better and more enjoyable, and you experience more happiness when you don't have an issue with saying no, and you say no as often as you feel like it. All of these rises of autoimmune diseases, all this stuff comes from our interactions with people. 9 times out of 10, I feel like the stress of social interactions and the stress of just existing in places and around people that benefit off of you not knowing yourself, or benefit off of you not trusting yourself, or benefit off of you not having boundaries is majority of the reason as to why a lot of women don't reach their fullest potential. And that essence of striving to be liked, striving to be accepted by people who just honestly don't even take the time to self-reflect, does you a great disservice. And as a whole, we need to begin to truly assess why we want to be so liked, why we care to be so kind all the time, when naturally being kind is most times out of 10 just a disservice to yourself that you just painted as the act of being polite and being kind. We really need to start assessing that as women, and not being afraid to say what we mean and mean what we say, because the consequences and the risks of not doing so are so grand that we need to begin to truly realize why it's so important to say what you need to say and mean what you say. And don't be afraid of how other people are going to receive you, or if you're going to be liked, or if you're going to be perceived a certain way, because truthfully, a lot of people don't even take the time to perceive themselves. A lot of people have a lot of opinions on things. I feel like the only people who have a right to have opinions are the people who actually self-reflect. And I will tell you from experience that a lot of people do not self-reflect. A lot of people just get up and do and don't think afterwards. Don't even think beforehand. Some people don't think at all. So it's very important, if you are a magical woman, you are a woman who is fully in your sovereignty and within your essence, and truly committing to being in your fullest power, the biggest hurdle will always be people and how we navigate in the world. It's easy to excel at something where you're not having distractions or people around that make you question yourself or anything like that. But the real mastery comes from learning how to exist in a world where there are tests and tribulations, trials and tribulations, and where you're going to experience people who don't understand you, and where you're going to have to learn to stand strong in your conviction of yourself, and you're going to have to learn to stand strong in the midst of oppression. You're going to have to learn to stand strong in the midst of people talking badly about you. You're going to have to learn to exist within the fire. And as witches, as magical women, that is the first skill that we must all master. Because I know for the most part, a lot of us didn't initially begin calling ourselves a witch out of the fear that was instilled and all of the commentary and the connotations that came with being a witch. But I know as we got more involved and we began to assess our life and who we truly were, we began to realize like oppression does come with being different. Being different and going against the grain and having different morals, having different standards, just the whole nine. You know, as magical women, we have a different type of experience, and that whole concept of learning how to walk through the fire as witches, we know exactly what that means. We've seen what they've done to women like us in the past. We learn to walk through fire on a daily, and I feel like in a way it's kind of an initiation sent by goddess in a way. I really look at it like that. I feel like walking through the fire is an initiation of the goddess, because women who were magical, mystical oracles were, you know, highly regarded at some point. But as patriarchy started to creep in and the oppressions of certain religions began to creep in, our whole existence was tainted, erased, destroyed, demonized. And so now in this day and age, like, of course we have more acceptance, we have more understanding of our existence, but still, all in all, unless someone is living this lifestyle, and unless someone knows what really comes with this walk and what comes with this life and what comes with just being a seer and being able to see life through this mystical and unveiled lens, we walk through fire every day. And the whole process of becoming our highest and most powerful selves is the process of walking through the fire. And so that's why being okay with not being liked and not letting your kindness be abused and not feeling like you have to be kind to everyone and about everything and so understanding to everything is the first key to really being able to exist as you deserve to exist. We deserve to exist in the way that we want to exist. We deserve to experience a life without the oppression of people's thoughts and opinions and beliefs. The women before us had to hide. We don't have to hide anymore. And it's great that we don't have to hide. But because we're not hiding, we're susceptible to more situations. And so we do have to learn to master certain parts of ourselves. And that's honestly what this podcast is about. It's all about self-mastery, but it's also about loving yourself. It's being in touch with your magical essence. It's being in touch with the divinity of your womanhood. It's being in touch with the magical essence of who you are. And so this is the first step towards really being able to fully exist without that shame, without that guilt that was so ingrained within us as children, as baby witches, as women who were coming from religious backgrounds, people with crazy opinions and beliefs that were shoved down our throats, you know, overcoming all of that and overcoming people-pleasing tendencies and overcoming the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of not being perceived how you want. Getting rid of that is so pivotal, because the more that you remain within the cage of other people's perceptions and other people's expectations, the more that you are not living your life. And we deserve to live our most magical life here, honey. Okay? So until next time, thank you so much for tuning in to the Self-Love Witch podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Kim. Please, you guys, if you're still listening, please go follow the Instagram page, the Self-Love Witch podcast. As I said, I did start the Patreon, but for some reason, it got deleted, which honestly, I think it was my fault, because I had requested to delete an old account and I think it was merged with this one. So I'm going to have to completely recreate this Patreon. So that honestly will be created this week. I'm honestly aiming to have it created by, I want to say by next Sunday, this upcoming Sunday is what I'm aiming to have it published by. I have more information on the Patreon, and I'll make a YouTube video about it, just explaining, what comes with it and things like that. But I just wanted to drop this episode because, one, it is a strawberry full moon, and I was able to witness it last night. It was completely gorgeous. But it reminded me of, kind of like this new this whole new energy that comes. Like, I know full moons aren't necessarily about beginnings. They're more so about releasing, right? But full moons and the fullness just give me this energy of like reflection and assessing what I had to let go to come into new beginnings. And so this was a special episode for me that I wanted to publish. So once again, thank you for tuning in. Please don't be afraid to reach out. I love talking to you guys. Until next time, peace.